Nobody expected a 21-year-old from Quezon City to walk into the American capital and dismantle 5 of the toughest women on the planet in a single week. But that is exactly what happened. And by the time the last ball landed in the court at Rock Creek Park, tennis had a brand new name to remember: Alex. And if you think this is just another tournament win, stick around. Because what she pulled off at the Mubadala DC Open was not just a title. Wasasias, Sikardiyasmanti. It was a full-blown statement to the entire tour that the girl from the Philippines is not here to make up the numbers anymore. She is here to take them down one by one, and that is precisely what she did. Starting with a player who had haunted her for 3 years, moving through a champion who thought she already had this tournament figured out, grinding past a former top 10 fixture who had beaten her before, dismantling a 4-time Grand Slam winner in under 80 minutes, and finally standing across the net from the world number 3 like she belonged there all along. Because by the end of that week, she did. So let's rewind and actually walk through how a kid who used to practice on a converted basketball court with lines taped onto concrete ended up lifting a trophy in front of 7,000 fans who had sold out the venue just to watch her play. This is the story of the week Alex rewrote what was possible for an entire nation of over 127 million people. And honestly, once you hear the full arc of it, you will understand why an entire country stopped what it was doing every single time she stepped onto that court. The tournament didn't start with fireworks. It started with unfinished business. Because sitting in the draw waiting for her in round 1 was Jung Chinwen, the reigning Olympic gold medalist, and the same player who had crushed Alex's spirit at the Asian Games back in 2023. That loss had lingered for 3 years. The kind of defeat that replays in your head at random moments. The kind that makes you wonder if you are ever going to get another shot at redemption. Well, she got her shot, and she almost let it slip away. Because Jung came out strong, taking that opening exchange and forcing Alex into a hole early. But here's the thing about this version of Alex that so many people underestimated all week. She does not fold when the math turns against her. She dug in, found her range on those flat, heavy ground strokes, and reeled off game after game until the match completely flipped. 4 of the final 5 games belonged to her. And just like that, a 3-year-old wound had finally closed. The head-to-head between them was even now. But more importantly, the ghost was gone. And she carried that confidence directly into round 2, where things got even heavier, because now she was facing Leylah Fernandez, the defending champion of this exact tournament, a player who had beaten her badly in Stuttgart only months earlier and left her searching for answers. So this was not just a second-round match. This was a psychological rematch. And for one set, it looked like a coronation. Alex played some of the cleanest tennis of the entire week, taking the first set 6-2 in barely half an hour. But champions do not go quietly. And Fernandez reminded everyone why she held that title, ripping off 5 straight games to surge ahead 5-1 in the second set. And for a moment, the whole tournament seemed to be slipping through Alex's fingers. This was the exact kind of position where careers either stall out or take a leap forward. And she chose the leap. 5 games in a row came right back the other way. She leveled it at 6-all, and then closed out the tiebreak to complete the turnaround. The defending champion was out, and Alex was still standing. That quarterfinal against Elena Svitolina, the tournament's 2nd seed and a former top 10 mainstay, almost felt like a formality by comparison, mostly because Alex had already beaten her in Berlin weeks earlier, with the exact same scoreline she would produce again in Washington, breaking her serve 6 separate times across the match. Afterward, she talked about coming in with the right mindset and just trying to hold her rhythm even when Svitolina turned up the aggression in that second set. And that composure under pressure had become the theme of her entire run. But nothing prepared people for what happened in the semifinal, because waiting there was Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, a former world number one, someone who had been dismantling opponents on this exact stretch of hard courts for the better part of a decade. And for the first time in WTA 500 history, two Asian stars were meeting in a semifinal on this stage. The significance of that alone would have made headlines. But then Alex went out and made the tennis itself the headline. She needed only 76 minutes to close it out, breaking Osaka's serve 4 times and winning the vast majority of her first serve points along the way. It was not a nervy escape. It was a statement win against one of the most decorated players of her generation. And Osaka, to her enormous credit, did not sugarcoat what she had just witnessed. She openly called Alex a star, someone people can genuinely look up to, someone who is already an inspiration on tour, coming from a 4-time major champion. That is about as strong an endorsement as tennis gets, and it set the stage for a final that felt almost destined, because standing on the other side of the net would be Jessica Pegula, the world number 3, the top seed of the entire tournament, and the exact player who had ended Alex's breakout run at the Miami Open back in 2025 in a brutal 3-set battle that took every ounce of energy both women had. That match had introduced Alex to the wider tennis world. But this time, the roles were completely different. This time, Alex was not the plucky underdog making a surprise run. She was the player who had already taken down an Olympic champion, a defending champion, a former top 10 player twice in a month, and a 4-time major winner, all in the span of 6 days. Meanwhile, Pegula had fought her own way through the bottom half of the draw, grinding past Diana Schneider in 3 sets to punch her ticket to the final. And in the build-up, both women were candid about what they were walking into. Pegula admitted she knew it would be a battle, and made it clear she saw Alex as the future of the sport, someone who had already arrived, while Alex reflected on how far she had come since that first meeting in Miami, saying she felt more complete as a player now, more physically developed, with real improvements in her strokes and her serve. And when the match actually started, she went out and proved every word of that self-assessment correct, because from the very first exchanges, her ball striking was locked in, her footwork was sharp, and she broke Pegula's serve early. A top seed who had 11 career singles titles to her name suddenly looked like she had no answers every time Pegula tried to claw her way. Back into rhythm, Alex had a counter ready. That relentless consistency that had defined her entire week never wavered. And when the final point landed, the scoreboard read 6-3, 6-4, and the stadium simply erupted. Because Alex had just done something no Filipino tennis player, man or woman, had ever done in the history of the sport. She had won a WTA 500 singles title, and she had done it by beating the world number 3 in straight sets in the final. Take a step back for a second and actually think about what that week represented, because the numbers alone are staggering. 5 opponents defeated, a combined 10 Grand Slam titles between them, 2 top 10 wins, 1 top 3 win, and a career-high ranking that would soon follow. But the financial side of this story is just as wild as the tennis itself. The champion's prize came out to $252,000, which converts to more than 15 million Philippine pesos, instantly becoming the single largest paycheck of her career. Even Pegula, walking away as the runner-up, still pocketed $155,000, which shows you just how much money was on the line at this level of the sport. But for Alex, the real prize was never just the check. It was the ranking points. She had entered the tournament at a career-high world number 28. Already the highest ranking any Filipino singles player had ever achieved. Her semifinal win over Osaka alone had guaranteed her a jump to number 24 with nearly 1,931 points to her name, and the championship added another 500 points on top of that, catapulting her all the way to number 20 in the world. An 8-spot jump in a single tournament. To put that into perspective, her legendary run to the 4th round at Wimbledon earlier that year had earned her 240 points and pushed her up to number 28, meaning this 1 week in Washington outproduced an entire Grand Slam campaign in terms of ranking value. She said herself that going into the draw, she had looked at the list of players, and it was absolutely stacked. Big name after big name after big name. So simply reaching the final already meant everything to her. But she went one step further than that. She won the whole thing. And this title became the crown jewel of a season that had already seen her collect a WTA 125 title in Birmingham and a semi-final run in Berlin. On top of that deep Wimbledon run that had already made her the highest-earning tennis player in Philippine history, between prize money and endorsements, her total earnings for the year alone had already crossed the $2 million mark before she even lifted this trophy. And when she was told earlier in the tournament what a title run would mean for her ranking, she admitted it sounded almost surreal, like something out of a dream. But she also said she was incredibly proud of it, and honestly, who wouldn't be? But here is where this story stops being about tennis statistics and starts being about something much bigger. Because 10,000 kilometers away from that stadium, an entire country was watching, and when that final point landed, the Philippines did not just celebrate a sports win, it experienced something it had genuinely never had before. A WTA singles champion of its very own, President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who had already personally honored Alex after her Wimbledon breakthrough earlier that year, was among the very first public figures to celebrate the achievement. During her reception at the presidential palace weeks earlier, he had told her that she had brought immense pride to the Philippines and to Filipinos everywhere, not only because of the winning itself, but because of the grace she carried through that success. He said, "The way she plays and the way she carries herself reminds the entire nation of the very best qualities Filipinos have to offer." And after this win, those words carried even more weight than before, because she had just backed them up on the biggest stage of her career. Across the Philippines, the celebrations were immediate and everywhere. From the streets of Quezon City, the very neighborhood where her tennis journey began on a converted basketball court with hand-painted lines, all the way to packed sports bars in Manila, where fans had gathered specifically to watch this final live. Social media absolutely lit up. Her name trended for hours straight. And it was clear the country had found a new kind of hero. Someone worth staying up late for. Someone worth rearranging entire schedules for. And that is not an exaggeration. Because this win reached far beyond the borders of the Philippines itself, it reached the massive global Filipino diaspora, the healthcare workers pulling overnight shifts in American hospitals, the domestic workers, stationed across the Middle East, families scattered across continents who all found a way to watch her matches no matter what time zone they were in. President Marcos even pointed out that hospitals around the world would pause whenever Alex was playing, just to catch the score. And when you sit with that fact for a moment, it tells you everything about what this athlete means to her people. She is not just winning matches. She is giving an entire diaspora something to rally around no matter where in the world they happen to be living. And Alex herself has talked openly about how overwhelming that kind of love can be to process. She has said that the amount of support she receives always brings a new kind of feeling, something that never quite gets old, no matter how many times she experiences it. And while some in the media have started calling her a unifier for the nation, she tends to brush that label off modestly, saying she just wants to have a positive impact on her community. But you cannot really argue with the results, because she has brought together a country of well over 100 million people around a single shared dream, watching one of their own conquer the biggest stages in world sport. And now that dream is not just a hope anymore, it is a documented historical fact. So let's talk about where this story actually begins. Because it is worth remembering that Alex was not born into this level of success. She started out on a basketball court in Quezon City that had been converted into a makeshift tennis space, training there day after day alongside her grandfather and her brother. long before sold-out arenas and seven-figure prize money ever entered the picture. There is something almost poetic about the fact that the same girl who used to show up to practice in ruffled socks and light-up shoes ended up becoming the player who broke a national ceiling that had existed for as long as competitive tennis had existed in the Philippines. And if you go back and listen to what she has said in interviews throughout this incredible season, there is a consistency to her mindset that explains a lot about how she pulled off a week like this one. After her semi-final win over Osaka, she reflected that she still has enormous motivation to become a better player and, just as importantly, a better person. She pointed out that she is only 21 years old, so she is nowhere close to considering herself some kind of untouchable figure in the sport. But here is the thing, to an entire nation of over 127 million people, that is essentially what she has become, whether she is comfortable wearing that title or not. And when you look at the trajectory of her season leading into this tournament, the pieces all start connecting. That Wimbledon run earlier in the year had already made her the highest-earning Filipino tennis player of all time, pulling in $300,000 from that tournament alone, on top of the money she had picked up from a strong showing at the Miami Open back in 2025. Add in the Birmingham title and that Berlin semifinal appearance, and you get a season that was already historic before she even touched down in Washington. But this DC Open run took everything to an entirely different level. Because this was not simply another good tournament on a strong resume, this was the tournament where she proved she belongs in genuine title contention against the very best players alive. Beating an Olympic champion, a defending champion, a former top 10 fixture twice within a single month, a four-time major winner, and the world number 3, all within the span of 1 week, is not something that happens by accident. And it is not something that happens to a player who got lucky with a favorable draw. This is what happens when a genuine top-tier talent finally puts every single piece of her game together at the exact same time. The movement, the consistency off both wings, the improved serve she had specifically referenced before the final, the mental toughness to climb back from 5-1 down against a defending champion, and the composure to close out a set point against the world number 3 without blinking. All of it came together in Washington, and now the entire tour has to reckon with the fact that this is not a one-off. This is a legitimate top 20 player who is trending firmly upward. And if you zoom out and look at the shape of her ranking climb across this single season, it tells an incredible story on its own. She started the year outside the reach of most casual tennis fans, broke through at Wimbledon to crack the top 30 for the first time in her career, kept stacking results through Birmingham and Berlin, and then exploded into the top 20 with this Washington title. That is the kind of ranking trajectory that gets people talking about Grand Slam contention, not just tournament wins, and given everything she showed off during this specific week. Dismantling that level of competition without a single hiccup once the pressure ramped all the way up. It is not unreasonable to start wondering just how high this ranking climb goes from here. The US Open was already on the immediate horizon by the time the confetti settled in Washington, and the North American hard-court swing was only going to keep testing her against exactly the kind of high-level competition she had just spent an entire week conquering. So if you are a tennis fan and you have not been paying close attention to Alex up until this point, this is genuinely the moment to start, because what she built in Washington was not a lucky week. It was a blueprint. Beat the players who have haunted you before. Beat the champions who are supposed to have your number. Stay composed when a match starts slipping away. And close out the biggest points of your life, like you have already been there 100 times before. That is exactly what she did against 5 separate opponents in a single week. And it is exactly why an entire country of over 127 million people stopped everything the moment she stepped onto that court. The trophy is real. The $252,000 check is real. The jump into the world's top 20 is real. But the thing that will actually stick with people the longest is the image of a 21-year-old holding that trophy above her head. Thinking back to a converted basketball court in Quezon City, and understanding that this moment was never just about her. It belonged to every single person who ever believed she could get here. And if this week in Washington proved anything at all, it is that Alex is only getting started. So if you enjoyed this breakdown of one of the most remarkable weeks in recent tennis history, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest storylines in the sport, because this is a career you are going to want to be watching very closely from here on out.